So yeah, we'll continue working through this JavaScript exercise right here. I think we stopped, yeah, we were discussing this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how you could dig into data sets. So did we add it to the map? I don't think we did.
No.
So we'll just start at 3 right here. The next session that we would be going through is this, it's a choropleth map creation. So it would be taking a map. Luke, you'll notice that I love this data
Yeah,
set.
that data set, yeah.
It's just easy. It's a good, simple data set to kind of display that. It's actually a lot like other data sets you'll find. But yeah, this is, this next session here is taking taking the default markers and, oops, go back in, and adding some custom ones. Although the rat's marching across Cambridge. And creating a little legend like that. So, we'll come back to the JavaScript one. So we're at part 3 here.
Should we open terminal, right?
Yep. So to go ahead and get started, I might actually have to re-download this. But to go ahead and get started, just make sure you kind of work from the copy you read last week, or you can grab a new one. Put that in the documents. And then to get you started here, this is unzipped, correct? Let's open up terminal. And change directories to the location that you just downloaded that. Download the file. So we're going to be in 4 JavaScript connectors. So you might already be there at this point. So once we get into here, this is where we can start up our development server. This will be where we do Python, Vim, simple HTTP server.
Sorry, for any places that have spaces, should I put a hyphen?
So anything that has a space,
Or underscore?
anything that has a space, you want to do CD, say like, you want to put it in quotes. So it'd be like Dropbox, MIT or something like that.
For the whole
Yeah, you put the whole.
link?
Yeah, you're going to want to put the whole thing in quotes. So once we get that running, if we go back to our browser, we have to load those. Load those data files. And where are we at here? This looks about right. So let's open up map 1. I'm going to use Text Wrangler, but if you have Sublime Text, I definitely suggest using it. And let's map 1 portion. Let's do this. So map 1 and map 1 partial. All right, so catching up to where we were here. The next piece, let's go back to our thing.
Mike, I can find that folder.
Hold on 1 second. Okay. So,
Can I see your terminal again?
yes.
I want to do this
Here.
independently this time. Can you do it?
I'm downloads, which is this.
The CD directory, and then there's another one, it's like L.
So I did ls to list what I have in that directory.
Okay.
Oh, so you see
So I
the
do-
downloads already?
CD,
Yeah, but it's not. So CD, okay, so now CD and type in that.
Oh,
So you're changing directories. So you've already changed your directory into your downloads folder.
Yeah, I'm already.
And now you're going to change directories again into that neighborhood.
I wrote this
Okay,
down.
So you need
And then,
just space,
space.
and then type in the folder. There you go. Now you're in that folder. So now you could start your Python.
And then I say,
Yep.
Or box or
Python
whatnot.
space.
Yeah.
Python.
So CD for
Oh, no, just, I'm sorry,
Oh.
Python.
so that's another directory that you want to enter.
Python dash n and simple HTTP server.
And-
Simple's capitalized.
Simple.
So once you're in here, you can do the Python server.
is it just Python or is
So it's Python dash m
Space?
No space.
simple
all caps.
HTTP?
single HTTP server. Yep.
And then capital server, no space. Just the access capital, sorry. And then, that's it, and then enter. And now, if you go to a web browser, and type in localhost, and then I would actually, yeah, if you actually get rid of the /mac81 HTML, and then enter. That's that folder. But then you go back to the actual folder called HTML in Text Wrangler or Sublime or whatever.
Sublime or yeah, some place where
And
you
then, I would like to work with map one, right?
why don't you open up map one partial or work on that one. That's about where we stopped last week. So map one partial is going to look like this. What we're working through here is also if you want to open up that sandbox to do some JavaScript testing in. repl.it. This is kind of a nice place to just kind of test some JavaScript stuff, see if it breaks. Play around here. So this last week is where we were toying with this this data right here. So if we go back to and we're just, this is just kind of saving a variable named coffee shops and allowing us to access the various pieces of the data, right? So. Yeah, so I think this is about where we were. Did we go through looping through a file last week? 'Cause last
No,
week
we didn't.
So
I don't think we did. Okay. So this is a link I'll actually send this to you. This is from the Big Data course this semester. Oops. JavaScript. So, so yeah, we were, I think last week we were playing with some of this stuff here.
Yes.
So this is, you know, kind of setting up loops and you know, being able to iterate through a JSON within JavaScript. So you'll notice what's really nice about this is this looks a lot like data. So you can work, you know, work with data sets in that standard format that we've been talking about called JSON. GeoJSON is an extension of the regular JSON that encodes geometries. We're just talking about GeoJSONs in Sarah's courses this week, I guess. But they're you know, essentially set formats for a JSON that will encode geographic features. So, for example, this JSON that we're looking at right here is a simple JSON showing showing coffee shops in Cambridge. And actually, I remember we did look at this last week because I remember Dennis had the question about the latitude and longitude being in here twice. And how that actually really doesn't affect us. We can actually get rid of these latitude and longitude values, and it's not going to matter because we have them saved in the geometry. So if we were to dig into this a little bit, remember the way JavaScript works is it works with objects. Like everything we work with in JavaScript is an object. And those objects can have properties and methods. What gets a little crazy though is those properties and methods are also objects.
So the reason, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
The reason why you can delete the Latin long is because geometry is another object that holds the Latin long elsewhere.
Yep. So the way that Leaflet works is it has it built into the Leaflet library is code that parses through a GeoJSON. This is the exact same way that D3 works. So the reason that you can populate features using Leaflet supports GeoJSON for the purpose that it's like just kind of a standardized format that can be used. So if you load a GeoJSON, the Leaflet library is going to know it's going to know to follow this type of path, right? So we can say geometry. So essentially, when you're working with GeoJSON, you know, it'll know. It's going to know that you're going to have your variable name that represents your JSON, and then within that JSON, if it's GeoJSON, it's always going to find coordinates, and it's always going to find a type at features and the position in your data set, geometry coordinates or geometry type. So that's the way that the people who wrote the library, when they wrote the library, there had to be some standardized format with which they could create features, and they built off of that. So GeoJSON is a way. It's a JSON that allows you to encode type and coordinates. These properties, the properties, so type, properties, and geometry you'll find in every single JSON feature. Type, says it's a feature. Geometry says the type of geometry, which is a point, and it has coordinates. If this were to say line, it would have a series of points, or a series of coordinates. Properties, this is, once you're inside properties, this can be anything you want it to be. This is where you would encode your attributes. But that's just because, the GeoJSON standard. When you load a CSV, or you load a shapefile, or you load a TSV or another data format using Leaflet, so if you use like the Leaflet CSV plugin, what that CSV plugin actually is a bit of code that translates a CSV to a GeoJSON. Does that make sense? And so that's like, you can use it as like a plugin. But yeah, essentially you need to be working with a JSON object.
And that code is offered in something with Leaflet that recognizes the CSV and transforms it into a GeoJSON.
Yeah, so if you go to the Leaflet plugins, these are actually really, really useful. If we were to, let's see, what are the data formats? So this GeoCSV is just like a little script that someone wrote. You can see it's right here, probably. That reads a CSV and the script essentially returns a GeoJSON. This Leaflet Omnivore is super nice. This has built-in scripts that do like a CSV to JSON. Leaflet anything. But you can see here, this script here is just a converter. It looks like it's using Node.
So let's say we have a CSV, and then you run that plugin, then it'll spit back out the GeoJSON code in the console.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So if we had a CSV,
Well, and not just into the console. I think it'll save
That the file.
a GeoJSON file.
Yeah.
And there's another. This is probably the cleaner way to do it. Is the thing that I'm showing now. But there's another website that actually Mike had found a project that I'm working on that just typed in like CSV to GeoJSON, and there's an online. I think it's pulling it up now.
yeah,
That first
there's a
one.
couple of converters here.
And so you give it the CSV file, you tell it which field is your latitude field, which field is your longitude field, and then it not only spits you out a GeoJSON, it actually, before it spits that out, it maps it onto, like, I guess onto like a leaflet.
And then
onto
it's
the
a
Slippy map.
preview.
Okay, and then the Slippy map is probably,
It's awesome.
I don't know if we were to just, let's find a simple CSV somewhere. This is not a simple CSV.
It also doesn't have latitude and
Doesn't
longitude.
have latitude and longitude.
But yeah, it's pretty simple. So there's a couple
pretty
different
simple, yeah.
web tools. Otherwise, the JavaScript code itself would probably be the cleaner version, but the other one is more interactiveness.
So what
You
this
can never change the code.
So what this plugin will actually do is if you input this script at the top of your
copy.
What this, just simply putting this in here will allow you to access all of the methods that are within that file. So to load a CSV, you could then do this, where this would be like population or whatever the name of your CSV is. And path. So because we grabbed this extra script, it has to be, so this script here, this leaflet omnivore mid.js, is just kind of a block of code that actually has leaflet itself as a dependency. So you have to be using the leaflet library, but it's a bit of an add-on. So it makes leaflet a little bit lighter, and say you're not going to be using CSVs, you don't need to use that. It makes the code a little bit smaller. But if you're going to be using CSVs, this is super nice.
How you say, when you say that we have to, the path is the entire directory where the file is located?
It's in relation to where your file is. So if I have this on my web page root, it's in relation to your root. If I have this like sitting on the root in the same directory as my index.html, I can just leave it like this. If I have it in a data folder, I would just the data dash in there. And actually, if I put a dash in front of data, that'll send it back to your absolute web root. So, if your index, so data name.csv, this would, so that's what it says. This would, look for data folder in the same location as your HTML file. If you were to get rid of this, it would just look for name CSV in the same location as your HTML file. Then if you were actually to do it with a backslash in front of it, it would look for name CSV within the data folder from your root. So that would be like, say my root is google.com, but I have everything. I'm working somewhere else. But it's still within the google.com domain. If I were to actually drop a backslash right in front of it, this would back it all the way out to just be google.com data name CSV. If you want to go out one level, it's tricky for you. You could do that. 2 levels and onwards. So, what would this look like?
The difference
Does that make
again,
sense?
the difference between slash data and then, or just data is what again? Sorry.
All right, so the difference, so data,
So if I'm in folder 1 and this file that I'm typing in is in
Yeah.
folder 1.
why don't I bring up let's bring this up and let's open instead of a new folder and we can, so say this is your site. Within the site, we'll do this. So within the site, if you have data, and then we'll say, I'm just saying, that's not actually a folder, it's called this name.csv. If your index.html is right here, you're going to want to just do, if your index.html is sitting in this location, you can do a bunch of data is in there, you would just write data with no slash before it, because it's just kind of going from the same location that it's found in index.html, and then put whatever the name of the file is. Say you have let's go to site. We call this index.html. So in our folder structure here, say we actually have another thing here called website. If we wanted to get to data going from that folder, we need to back out a level, right? So our data set's actually in here, but we're within here. So we'd have to come back out one level, go to data, and back in. So the way you would do that is use that's when you would do a dot. And that's exactly how it works in your command line. So if I change this here and I look at where I'm at, if I do cd dot, it actually just takes me out one level.
So that's dot or no slash. But is there a condition when it's just slash?
Yes.
Yeah, so the condition when it's just slash would be, let's see here.
Take you one level up, right?
So the condition where it's just a slash is, say you have this nested somewhere like crazy far in here, but this is still just at like, Mike.com in a data folder. That slash would take you back out to your default root page. So it would go all the way back out to as far, it go to your bottom level root.
Okay. Which is where your index is saved. No.
Which would be where maybe.
Okay.
Your index is say you have, so you say your web map is actually on something it would be where your index is saved.
Okay.
So when you would just go to loopmitch.com,
Yeah.
that page that comes up
Yeah.
that's your root.
Gotcha.
That's what you get to when you navigate to your URL. Say you actually have a web map in loopmitch.com, portfolio, slash portfolio slash 2016 or something like that. There's a map in there. If you have actually just on loopmitch.com another folder that just says data, you put all your data into that folder. To get to that, it's easiest just to go straight out to the regular root.
Gotcha.
And then
work your way back in.
And then work your way back in.
Okay.
So you would do that just by putting a slash. So your data folder would be like loopmitch.com/data/name.csv, right? Whereas your map could be somewhere completely different.
Is there a reason why you should use terminal to locate your directory instead of using something like fetch? While we're on this whole discussion of just locating directories and files.
It's all a matter of what you want to use. Terminal is the most simple. Terminal's not necessarily very easy for it's not a UI though, you can't drag and drop.
Right.
So if you want to be dragging and dropping stuff.
It's the intention of it is just to make everything easier.
Yeah, it provides an interface for you to be able to drag and drop files. So it's really a matter of personal preference. I end up using the terminal a lot when I'm just working on my local host and creating a map or a visualization. It's just it's fast. When I push stuff to my actual website, I have to go through an FTP. which I could do through here, but as familiar with how, so I just use like CyberDuck or Fetch or whatever. So like when everything's running nicely, I'll just use the FTP to actually push it to my website, so it's live. But I mean, it's, yeah, you kind of come up with your own workflows as you go. Okay, it's already 4:20, holy crap. We only have 10 minutes left, I'm so sorry, let's get moving. This is good stuff to talk about though.
Yeah, sorry.
It's really useful, so. So this is our GeoJSON, right? If we want to add our GeoJSON to our map, we actually would use the l.geojson method. So GeoJSON is actually a method of leaflet that takes a GeoJSON as an argument and then processes it and essentially it like does whatever leaflet needs to do to get it ready to go on the map, which you have to dig under the hood to see what that actually is. And since it's already a JSON, it's probably not that much. But it essentially will parse out the latitude and longitudes, or parse out the shapes, and process them as the leaflet library does. This add to is a method of GeoJSON. So the add to would add it to our map object. So that's,
in this case, we already have the GeoJSON file, right?
so our GeoJSON file is not actually a separate file in this case. Our GeoJSON file, if we look at our map here, and this is just jump to this line, so I'll get rid of that, is actually just saved as a variable. You can do it this way. There's actually, this way works just fine, but this way presents a lot of problems. One of those problems is you're just putting your whole data set right into your document, which is just not extremely efficient. You're kind of just hard coding it in. Also, it can make your document really long. Sometimes, like if you have some little data sets that you just want to put on there, you're dropping a point on a map, this is totally fine. It's kind of, might be silly to go grab that from a different file. But when you call a GeoJSON, or like when you load a JSON from another location, this is essentially, what you're doing instead of putting it in the file. So using the l.geojson method, and then part of that method is on each feature to run a function. We would use so the layer is actually the feature that's being created. We would bind a pop-up, and that pop-up would be the feature property's name. Right, so come back in here, go to coffee shops, feature 0 or 1 or whatever you want to do. Properties. So that's what we are. That's what we're binding to our pop-up. So taking a look at this, if we save, we're just what this does is it just adds those 2 points to the map. So it's a little bit more like that's kind of what's going on under the hood there. So yeah. The next thing we're going to work with here are some functions. And what we're going to do is we're going to set up some functions to basically turn layers off and on, or kind of set various, set some filters on our map. And those filters we're actually going to just set up if statements. So it'll be like if name is equal to Starbucks, show on the map. Functions, if you've not worked with them much before, are essentially blocks of code that just run when you tell them to. And the primary goal of a function is to return, well, often the primary goal is to return a value that you can then use at a later point. So that value could be, because we're working with JavaScript, can be all kinds of crazy stuff. That value can be an entire JSON. But it's essentially like this GeoJSON method here that's actually a function. And it takes a data set as an argument. So JavaScript is a crazy language to work with because objects are functions, are variables, are methods, are properties, are also objects. Everything is like, it makes it really versatile, but it's like you're kind of using all kinds of terminology over and over and over again. But a super simple example of a function, which we looked at last week. This would just be to create like a simple multiplication function right here. So maybe we wanted to call it multiply.
Do you have a typo in the first line? Multiply.
Oops, good catch. Right, so that's just a super simple example of a multiply function. We've done some Pythoning before. It's almost the same thing. The only thing you'll notice is there's a few more curly brackets and semicolons going on. This A and B, these are arguments that are read into the function. So these aren't actually specific numbers or values. They are placeholders for what you can give to the function. So in this case, we're doing it in a form of 3, and they're going in the place of the A and the B throughout the function.
So if we change the var, you will change the function.
So if I change this,
If I change the 4 and the 3, 4, 5, and let's say 7,
so it doesn't really matter what you're putting in there. That's kind of the idea around functions. You're going to want to what you give, what you run. Let's see, the variables you run through a function are, and to use the term in its own definition, are a variable. So if you are going to be getting different values that you're going to be wanting to multiply on a regular basis, you could set this up. Essentially, that's what this will allow for. So that's a function. There's a little bit on some math thinking stuff. This was from part 1, but it's like a little bit of layer toggling. So say, in our example, we wanted to add some buttons that would show our show all of our coffee shops. One of the ways that we can do that is to change this, set this to be a variable. So if we call this a going to be coffee shop points. And then we don't add it to the map right away. So now every time we refer to coffee shop points, it's going to run this, and it's going to give us an object that we can work with in our map. We haven't yet added it to our map though. So when we're working, so here if we wanted to actually add it to the map now, coffee shop points, add to map. I'm gonna start this over. It's still just adding them to the map because our call to that JSON is actually preserved within this method or within that variable. Excuse me. So,
Sorry, Mike, I didn't understand what you did. If you put that argument.
So you see what I did here actually is this kind of a glorified version of algebra, if you will. This whole chunk of code from here to here, I'm just setting equal to coffee shop points. So whenever I refer to coffee shop points, it's actually reading this entire bit of code. Yeah, it's a way that you can save yourself some headache, make your code a bit shorter, make it a bit more modular. So say you're going to be running this a whole bunch, you're not going to want to have to write that every single time. So you can save it as coffee shop points, and then every time you want to refer to coffee shop points, you can just refer to that variable.
So is it fair to say that coffee shop points as a variable is both the process of running those functions and the resulting object from those functions? Or is it really just the resulting object?
So coffee shop points is the resulting object.
Okay.
So when you're working in JavaScript, you can save functions within variables.
And what you're really saving is the object that is spit out by that function.
What you're actually saving is the return
Okay.
from that function.
Which is coffee shop's point.
So coffee shop, yeah, so
Well, you're naming it that, and what it really is taking a GeoJSON on each feature, making finding the pop-up of the property. Yeah, right. Like you're doing all that and you're making an object which is a name pop-up for each feature.
mhm. So if we save this and we go back to our map here, if we look in let's take a look at our console. If we type in coffee shop points, is it not gonna... okay, so let me make sure I've got this correct here. So it might not actually be returned. This might not actually return something until we put the add to.
Okay. But that's simply because we haven't put return as a part of that function.
Yeah, so somewhere in here, there's not a return that's giving it back. So, I mean, if we were to take this, and this is not entirely clear because that's actually built into the default library. We could go find it, and we can change it if we want to. I'd be scared of doing that because I don't want to accidentally break something in leaflet because that's like,
Yeah.
that's opening a whole other can of worms. But in theory and in practice, really, there'd be no reason you can't just go find it and adjust something in there to give a return. which is an awesome thing about open source too. But yeah, so presumably there's not a return in here, but this add to map is more or less a return statement. It's a good question. Kind of, it's interesting to kind of reason through that. So yeah, coffee shop points. If we, it's essentially just this little block of code throughout the rest of our map is can be referred to as the coffee shop points. So what we can then do in our document is if we add a couple of buttons. So say we just added one here that would, this would be one that can put this in place of our buttons. We'll go here. This is just a simple button that shows all coffee shops, and then we would use an event listener. An event listener is just something that listens for something to happen to your map. This would be a click. When it hears a click, it's going to run at coffee shops. But it's looking for a click on this element. So then what do we need to do? We need to write a function that adds the coffee shops, right? So add coffee shops can be coffee shop points, add to map. So we throw this in. Doc. And then we put this add to map in here. This is going to be, this is just, we're just JavaScripting at this point. This is going to be, defines similar type actions in all of your other libraries that you might use. But you'll notice this add to, which is seemingly our return, is not actually called until this function is run. And this function is not actually run until there's a click on the add button, which is right there. So we're going to save, come back here, click. That work? Oh, I'm in the wrong spot. So
You changed the name of the file.
JavaScript wrappers, exclamation okay, so now I just have to go to here. My bad. Little turnaround. So now we have our button sitting here. We've got everything queued up. It's not going to actually add it until it gets the click on the button called add button, which is that button, and then it's going to run this little function that just adds to that. So.
And the reason add buttons in quotes is because it's an ID, not an actual name of a.
Right.
Trying to figure out between quotes and not quotes. If you name a variable, you don't need quotes, but that's the ID of an element.
Yeah, exactly. One way around this could be to button. it. So basically, you can you can think of it as you can modularize the shit out of this. You know, you can like break everything up into like crazy pieces.
I have a question, man.
Mm-hmm.
Does it matter where I put that code, or it hasn't to follow any order at all? I mean that last part of code that you wrote.
This right here.
Yeah.
Not necessarily. So the order of operations gets a little confusing. The way that JavaScript will work is it will run from top to bottom. So we'll kind of go in sequential order down the page. However, you have to notice what we're actually doing here is there's just certain things that like we're not necessarily, so right here, you know, this stuff, let's get us a text wrap on here. So we can see that a little bit better. So if we're, you know, running through, kind of doing like a top to bottom run here, the first things that it's going to see is this map creation. Then it's going to see a tile layer followed by an immediate add to map. So that's just going to be done. That's going to be there. The rest of this bar coffee shops, this is actually just declaring a variable that's available to us in the DOM, in the object model. So this is an object that's now sitting there. This is an object that's now sitting there. This is an object that's now sitting there. This just creates a listener. And this is a function. Which a function is like everything else in JavaScript's an object. So, you know, these are all just kind of like sitting there waiting for us. So essentially we've loaded them into the DOM. We've loaded them into the document object model. The document object model it's got this line of code that tells you that my button is going to, you know, what's going to happen when it gets a click. Makes it live.
Playing off that, if you define a variable after calling it in a function or something like that, does that break JavaScript, or will it, if it hits something it doesn't recognize yet, will it keep going to look for it?
No, if it hits something it doesn't recognize, it's going to say it's undefined.
Okay, even if it's the next line of the code.
Right.
Okay.
So actually this is going to be an interesting exercise. Let's see if we flip these, if it breaks it. If we put this down beneath here.
Yeah, okay.
So it does matter.
It does matter. But what matters is, that's the best way to describe it. What matters is what's loading what's loading automatically. And what's loading automatically needs to go in order. These are all set up to be somewhat asynchronous. So this is going to go. This is going to, you know, L tile layer, add to map. Doesn't know what map is. Oh, here's map. But it's not going to see that. It's going to give you an error right here because it doesn't know what map is. This creates map, so we can put this up here. Same thing would happen here. It's not going to know what map. Well, it will know what map is here because it's been created. Order of operations is it does get tricky.
Yeah. But it's like Python.
What's that?
It's like it works like Python, that it matters how you do the code.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. However, these functions that you create, these can go wherever you want them to go, right? Because this isn't actually, this is just set up and waiting to run. But anything not saved as a variable or that's just running from line will go in order. How would you create then a remove button? It would be essentially, I'll take a look at the source to see the example. If we look at the show page source, if we created an extra button, called it remove button, and then just created another little function that just said remove copy shops. We can use map.remove layer. And we know that remove layer is an object of map. If we look at our docs, and we look at methods available. So map.remove layer would remove whatever you say here from the map. So we can say remove layer, copy shop points. Has layer, this is a good thing to use for if loops or conditional statements, because it's if map.has layer copy shop points equals true, do something else, maybe add it, or each layer, this iterates over all the layers of the map. If you've done any D3, this is like a select all, where it will just kind of go through all of the layers and run whatever function you have defined in there on that layer. Yeah, these are some of the options available.
That's pretty cool. There is a lot of documentation.
Yeah, the documentation for Leaflet is wonderful. It's really nice. You can just get in here and search around. So that's actually what we're going to talk about. Well, we're supposed to be out of time, you guys. We're like 20 minutes over. But it was in part my fault. I should have kept us moving. But these are like good questions. We're just learning JavaScript.
Yeah, it's a lot to
so
it's a lot to learn.
it's a lot to process.
So,
They're like full semester courses, and they're actually you can do degrees in JavaScript basically. So. But yeah, the next little step here, and we won't do this, we won't go through it next week, we'll stop in 3 weeks. But we're talking about essentially if you wanted to do an if loop to maybe turn a layer off if it's on the map or add it if it's not. Here, I've noticed I'm using the actually that map has layer, and I'm testing it. So this toggle copy shops. It's going to, the way I've written this, it will say if, our map object has layer copy shop points, remove it. Else, add copy shops. And we just wrote those, right? So then we could create a third button that would just be called toggle. And in that, third button, on a click, it would run the toggle copy shops. So if you were to click toggle all copy shops, turn them off and on. Filtering would use loops just the same way. Not loops, but conditionals. Yeah.
So what is the difference between the toggle button
And the what?
You have another button called high coffee shops. What is the difference between those?
Oh, so show all coffee shops does what?
Yeah, show all the coffee shops.
Right. What's it actually running now? We just wrote this. Add all coffee shops, right? So when we click show all coffee shops, it's going to run add all coffee shops. When we click hide all coffee shops, it's going to run remove coffee shops. When we click toggle, we can actually set up a conditional in here. So it's if map has layer coffee shop points, which we just saw in the documentation. Actually, this has layer is a function in itself that returns a true or false based on whether or not it has that layer. So built into leaflet, it has layer will run through our map object, and if it finds within that map object coffee shop points, it will say true. If it doesn't, it will say false. So if it finds true, it's going to run remove coffee shops. So it's going to do that. If it finds true, it's just going to run the same thing that hide all coffee shops would do. Otherwise, it's kind of a yes or no situation. If it doesn't find coffee shops or any, if it finds any other layer other than coffee shops, it's going to add coffee shops.
Yeah, because thinking in terms of the user, you have the same functions, but maybe just one button.
Yeah, you have toggle, in practice, toggle would turn into show/hide all coffee shops.
Yeah, so what we could do here, if we really wanted to get into this a little bit more, we could say, how about, where's our show/hide? Let me just, I'll grab this working example. Copy it all. Put it in my code. I save. So what we could actually do here, if we wanted to, we could say document it element by ID toggle button, and then how do we write that up here? Yep. So we could say inner HTML wait, we want to make this say show coffee, right? And if we were to do this same thing right after this, hi coffee, right? So now if we run this, maybe I don't have it in here, HTML. Let's double check to make sure I got that syntax right. Oh. Great, now what did I do? Did I break it?
You did the same file.
Yeah, something's being weird there. But essentially, you know, what this would do is let you change the content. Let's see. Let's make sure I'm in the right spot again. Turn around here. Oh, I'm not in the right spot. Yeah. Okay. There we go. So that makes a little bit more sense, right?
Yeah. No, I was thinking that in terms, thinking about the use, maybe that button would be more useful instead of having two, just one, like shift.
Yeah, well, I mean, I totally agree with you. So, you know, if we just got rid of this and we just set this to say, show coffee shops. Something's going wrong at line 59. Oh, we don't have this button here. So we get rid of that. We get rid of that. Save it. So there you go.
That's cool.
So if we wanted to get real crazy, what else could we do here? We could save this as change button. Which that would actually probably be the better way to do that, because we're not, anytime you can write something once instead of twice, you're making it potentially easier on yourself down the road. So this will change our map.
Nice.
So yeah, it's 5 o'clock. I'll let you guys go.